Well, welcome everyone to the webinar on family caregiving tips and tools for you and your loved ones. We're glad that you are joining us today. Just a couple things to start with, introductions. I am Jane Strumman. I am a gerontology specialist with North Dakota State University Extension. And my colleague who is with me today is Lacey Brown. She's a gerontology field specialist with South Dakota State University. So we're doing, starting a kind of a pilot of some webinar series, and this is our first one. So we're glad that you could join us. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. If you have a question during the webinar, please feel free to use the chat box at the bottom, and Lacey or I will try to keep an eye on those and read them either when they come in or save them to the end, depending on timing. And then just a reminder that we have everyone muted during the webinar. If you do have a question that you want to ask in person, please unmute, ask your question, but please remember to re-mute when you're done. And then also, at the conclusion of the webinar, you will receive an email with the webinar slides from today, as well as several handouts that we're going to be referencing as well. And also, right after the webinar, you're going to get a link by email to an evaluation. And we would really appreciate your feedback by completing the evaluation. Let us know what we can do to make the webinars better. Like I said, this is our first one. And also on the evaluation, there's an opportunity to make recommendations for future webinar topics. So we'd appreciate hearing your thoughts on that. The last question on the webinar or on the evaluation does ask if you want to be notified about future webinars. And if you answer yes, just know that you'll be taken to a new screen new page where you can enter your name and your email address, and we'll only use this for webinar notifications. Later, I'm not exactly sure how long it will take, but we will have a link to the recording for this webinar, and we will send that to you as well. So with that, I think I've taken care of the housekeeping items, and we will get started. And so during the webinar, there's several things that we hope to accomplish. And what we're going to be doing is exploring some of the key issues that we know family caregivers face when caring for an older adult. We're going to be looking at some of the common stressors of family caregiving. And we're going to be talking about some strategies to help manage caregiver stress and still provide that high quality care that we want. And also very important is being able to identify and access resources that can help family caregivers. So those are things that we hope to accomplish over the next few minutes together. So moving on, we're going to talk about, who are caregivers? And just to start with, well, you may or may not recognize yourself as a family caregiver. Several examples, you might just take care of your husband or wife because that's what spouses do, right? Consider the following examples. Many adult children gradually start helping their aging parents, and they don't think of themselves as caregivers. Parents of children with special health or behavioral needs don't see themselves as caregivers either. Grandparents who raise their grandchildren only see themselves as being loving grandparents. Spouses and family members of military members who come back from war wounded don't see themselves as caregivers either. Family members who live at a distance, they're still helping. They might not see themselves as caregivers. Children and teens also help care for sick siblings, parents, or other aging relatives. So, and many caregivers we know are older and in poor health themselves. All of these people are caregivers. So it's a broad range of people across a lot of settings. So we have a question for you. Are you a caregiver? We're going to pull up this poll, and you'll see that there are several tasks listed. And I'd like you to just take a a minute or so and think about whether you provide or have provided in the past any of the following types of assistance to a family or friend. And you can check all that apply. And I believe that, yeah, you should see all of them on the screen. So just take a couple minutes and think about whether you provide or have provided in the past any of these activities to a friend or family member. And then when you're done, just hit submit and we'll take a look at that.
About 25 more seconds.
Okay, thank you. You can see we have probably the most frequent type of task is offering social support or emotional support, assistance with transportation, 78. Doing grocery shopping or fixing meals came in pretty high, as well as light housekeeping. I don't need to read them all there for you, but you can see if you've checked any of those items, then you are a caregiver. And if you didn't, you probably know somebody who is doing these types of tasks for a loved one. So thank you for participating in that. So moving to the next slide, Rosalind Carter, the former First Lady of the United States, made this insightful statement that I really like. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And I think that really kind of sums it up, how important caregiving is to all of us as a society. So there are some common myths about family caregiving. And we have 4 true or false statements, and we put them up on this poll. And I'd like you to take if you can see 3 of them, but there's a gray bar on the right-hand side. So there's actually 4 statements if you scroll down. Take a minute or 2 and read through those statements, and please answer whether you think the statement is true or false. And then when you've submitted it, we'll take a look at it and we'll talk about each of these statements and find out what the true or correct answer is. So take another minute or so to do this.
I'll give you another 20 seconds.
Okay, great. Thanks for participating in this. Let's see what the answers are. The most common care decision that families need to make about care for aging adults is about what type of care facility in which to have them live. And the answer is false. Most care provided to older adults is done by family caregivers in a home setting. Family caregivers provide 70 to 80% of all the community-based care needed by older adults. So really the most common decision is who will provide the family-based care when it's needed. The next one, women provide most of the direct care that is given in family caregiving situations to aging parents by family members, and the answer is true. While there is the ethic of adult sons caring for parents in some cultural settings, even in those situations, it's the daughter-in-laws or other women in the family who provide the most direct care. But we do see that men are slowly becoming more involved in direct care as well. Adult daughters are the most common primary caregivers when family care is given to an aging or needy adult. The answer is false. The most common primary caregivers are first the spouses, either husbands or wives, followed by daughters and daughter-in-laws. So adult daughters provide a great deal of care, but for aging spouses, to be in this circumstance is even more common as well. And now the last statement, the feelings of obligation that an adult child feels toward a parent are the strongest predictor of how often an adult child has contact with a parent. And the majority said false, and that is the correct answer. Although an adult's child's feelings of obligations are important, the biggest factor in regular contact is proximity, how close they live to a parent. The next most important factor is the feelings of parent-adult-child closeness that exist. And then then the third one is feelings of obligation. So anyway, that those are some of the, sometimes they're a little tricky to get those, but thanks for participating in that. So just moving on to the next slide, just really talking about what is family caregiving. It can kind of be a nebulous topic, but you know, each of us is growing older, and also the people that we love and care about are also growing older and have some care needs as well. And this can include our parents, our siblings, our spouses, our in-laws, other family members, friends, and neighbors. So a common experience is giving care to a family member in need, which is referred to as family caregiving. So it can include help and assistance through some of the basic tasks such as personal care, household chores, financial management, emotional support, or giving food and shelter to dependent adults or family members. So, and the level of caregiving that one provides can really range across the gamut, from somebody who's doing some occasional tasks to somebody else who is doing 24/7 care to a homebound individual. So let's take a look at some of the benefits of caregiving. And there we go. Caregiving, the experience can provide a lot of positive benefits, both to the caregiver and to the care receiver. So, you know, what are some of those benefits to the caregiver? Well, we know that it provides an opportunity just to develop a closer relationship with the care recipient. And it can lead to an opportunity to understand each other better, heal maybe some past differences or difficulties. We can experience greater patience with people who have some challenges with their health and life. And it certainly gives an opportunity for caregivers to experience a growth as an individual when they do that. And then the positive benefits for the person receiving the care, the care recipient. Well, first of all, they're getting this personal, individualized attention and care from somebody that they know and love. And what is better than that, right? They also have an opportunity to share that life experience with them. And they have an opportunity to just have this closer bond and relationship with their loved one. And I'm sure that you can think of others. This is just a few things, and that you can think of other benefits as well. So let's talk now about planning for care. The time to plan for care for the needs of a family member is best if it's done before the person needs care, or at least before the person needs really significant care. When we're in good health is the best time to plan ahead, because we typically have more options available to us, and we have the time to talk with others about their preferences and their decisions. It's important not to wait for a crisis to happen before we start talking about these things like preferences for the future, where a person wants to live, details about their finances. It's really difficult if we wait for that crisis to happen and we start talking about those things. Planning for care is similar to planning for retirement. The earlier, the better. So some of the unique circumstances that need to be considered in the caregiving planning process is, whether the move into caregiving is sudden or gradual. If it's sudden, then maybe it's a fall and a broken hip or a stroke that happens, or it could be gradual. A parent who is just becoming a little bit more frail over time, and it's been a gradual move into caregiving. The other is the type of illness or care need. Caring for somebody with Alzheimer's disease or some other type of cognitive impairment can be much more challenging than caring for somebody with a physical impairment. And then we're looking at the type of caregiver. There could be a long distance caregiver that it can be really difficult emotionally or logistically and not as hands-on. There's also many caregivers who are working, and they're trying to balance their time between their career, their job, maybe other children at home, and their caregiving role as well. And then where you live. Do you live in an urban setting or a rural setting? We do know that caregivers living in a rural setting face unique challenges as far as not having as many available formal services available to them, such as different types of health care. There might be transportation difficulties, weather issues in the winter, and the geographic isolation and distance as well. And then there are cultural differences in caregiving. The greater diversity that we have means that families are bringing their own histories, their traditions, rituals, preferences to caregiving. And so many cultures have family expectations about the caregiving roles of family members. So with that, let's talk about some caregiving tips. A first tip is to size up the situation. So what do you know? What do you need to know? Establishing a baseline of information is really helpful in making current and future care decisions. So here's some steps to think about. Talk to the person in need of care. Talk to other loved ones, family members, and friends. Seek to understand their awareness and perspective about the situation that's going on. Then ask the following. What, if anything, has changed for the care recipient? What specifically is happening that requires attention? And what is happening or needs to happen to meet some very specific care needs? And then get a mental health, or a care need assessment or diagnosis. You really need to have a clear understanding and awareness of the care situation. And there's a variety of professionals that can assist in doing a formal assessment of medical or care needs as well. And then lastly is educate yourself on the care needs or the illness or the related topics. Learn as much as you can about the illness or situation so that you can understand what's happening. You cannot know it all because this is a job that you were likely not trained to do, and I can't stress that enough. But knowledge is available. There are sources that include our different agencies, healthcare professionals, books, articles. There's associations and support groups that can help provide information on these topics. So let's look at another tip. We need to talk about the big issues that need to be considered in caregiving. There are 4 big issues: finances, legal concerns, housing, and healthcare. So for finances, what financial resources are available to provide care? That's a basic question. We need to know that. Most people prefer to keep their financial information private, right? But to best prepare for a family member's care, we need a full understanding of the person's financial assets and liabilities. So we really need to develop a list of the assets and the liabilities, all their accounts, Social Security income, CDs, stocks, bonds, real estate deeds, insurance policies and annuities, retirement or pension plans, credit card debt, home mortgage, loans, and so forth. And also, then we need to research, what does it cost for home and community-based care in your community for the types of care that might be needed in the future. So that's just a basic thing, a very important thing. There's also legal considerations. Do you have the legal documents in place that will authorize you or another person to make legal, financial, and healthcare decisions on behalf of somebody else? Also, are these legal documents in an accessible location? Do you know where they are? And the documents could be things like the Social Security number, birth, marriage, and death certificates, divorce decrees, property settlements, military records, income tax returns, wills, trust agreements, and burial arrangements. You know, at some point, you might need these types of documents to determine eligibility for public programs such as Medicaid. And then there's healthcare considerations. The type of illness or frailty of your family member will determine the type of care needed, where the care can be received and how much it will cost. So we need to talk to the family member about their wishes and preferences for care and incorporate this into a plan of care. And then lastly, housing considerations. There could be a variety of issues related to housing to consider. How adaptable is your family member's home? Would a family member who became disabled or couldn't use the stairs be able to stay in that home? What would making modifications cost? And is the home safe? Also need to consider, would a move be required, and where would that be to? Or is downsizing something that might need to be required, and how would you go about doing that? So there's a lot of things that come around the housing issue as well, and I'm just touching broadly on what they are. So how do you talk about these issues? It can be very difficult to talk about these types of things. Some people can feel easily embarrassed or concerned about, you know, their loss of their personal freedom or dignity. But, you know, talking about caregiving is really talking about your love and concern and care for somebody. So, you know, you really need to think about to yourself that you're starting a conversation about that, your love and care for somebody, rather than about needing care, and just to begin the conversation. So as part of this webinar, we have several handouts, and this is one of them, and it's just a brief guide about how you might start thinking about and even beginning those conversations with your own family. And there's some different topic areas and some suggested maybe starting points for those conversations. And that also will be emailed as part of the slides, the handouts. So the next tip is about forming a support team who can work together with you in providing the care that is needed. Caring for a friend or a family member is a big responsibility, and it's typically more than one person can handle on their own. You know, trying to do everything yourself can lead to burnout and potentially creating your own health problems as well. So forming a supportive network of family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, etc., can be a tremendous help in this experience. There is a book that I've read called Share the Care that is a really nice resource about how do you start this process, and how do you look for others to be part of this network. But when we're looking at developing a care plan, we're assessing different areas of care that the person might need. And I'm just going to go through some of those areas of care for you to consider. The first is around personal care. What does that person need around, like, bathing, eating, dressing, grooming, toileting? That would be one area. A second area would be household care. Do they need help with cooking, cleaning, laundry, finances? And then around healthcare, do they need help with their medications, getting to their doctor's appointments, physical therapy, those types of things. Emotional care, that's important for people as well. Do they need some assistance with companionship, meaningful activities, and conversation? And last, around supervision. What needs to be done for some oversight to make sure somebody is safe at home, or in some cases need some help to prevent wandering if Alzheimer's or dementia might be a diagnosis. And when we're developing this plan of care with these different areas that I've just gone through, we have to remember that a plan of care is a work in progress, and it's going to change as your loved one's needs change as well and over time. So, start by listing the things that you're capable of, that you have time for and you're willing to do. Then list the things that you would like or need help with now or in the future. And then look to that support network, that informal support, such as siblings, friends, neighbors, coworkers, and think about how each person might be able to provide assistance. And then we need to ask them as well. So now we're going to talk a little bit about stress management for caregivers. Providing care directly to a family member or adult who has some specific health concerns or challenges has a big impact on a person's life. And we've just talked about there are a lot of benefits to the caregiver, but caregiving can also create a lot of challenges that come to because of increased stress, maybe it's individual fatigue or financial hardships of providing that caregiving. So, and caregivers have to learn a lot of new things themselves. So, individuals often have experience providing care to maybe a young child or adolescent child, but it's a whole different thing about, taking over payment of bills for a mother-in-law who's always paid her own bills. And now how do you do that? Or maybe it's knowing what to buy at the grocery store for your aging sibling who can no longer make the trip to the grocery store. Fortunately, we do have a lot of information available and useful resources that can help caregivers kind of manage their stress so that it doesn't become a problem. So let's take a look at some of the areas of stress related to family caregiving. The caregiving experience does impose demands on family members at times. They need to deal with significant levels of stress. So it's important to identify the area of stress and figure out some interventions to alleviate that. And so just to briefly, describe these physical demands, they could be things like direct care, the lifting, the bathing, the feeding, maybe it's doing the housework, the yard work that you haven't had to do before. The financial demands, paying for healthcare and medical costs, and paying for equipment, and paying for help that you need in the home. And maybe it's lost income because you've had to cut back on your job to be a family caregiver. And there are emotional burdens, feeling isolated and alone, feeling like you don't have the time for yourself that you need, that you once had. And then relationship challenges. Maybe there's conflicts with your siblings over the care, or conflict with the person that you're providing care for, communication issues. So there can be lots of challenges that come with that. Perhaps there are some other stressors you've experienced, and feel free to just type them into the chat box if there's some that you would like to highlight or mention as well.
We'd certainly love to have your input. Should be a little chat icon down at the bottom of your screen. We'd love to hear how you've experienced or witnessed stress in your family.
And if you'd like to do that, please go ahead and do that. But we'll throw up the next slide, Lacey, if you would, because I think it's important to highlight this next handout that you'll also receive. There are some additional stressors that are listed in those 4 categories, as well as some coping tips that are available as well. And I just want to maybe give you an idea, under the area of emotional burden. We know that emotional demands are really a hidden cost of caregiving, and they can be very stressful and severe as well. Some of the stress sources or emotional demands we mentioned, like feeling alone and feeling isolated and not having enough time. There's other things too, and sometimes these are hard things to talk about, but fatigue and emotional irritability, anger. Anger is a very common emotion of caregivers. That anger and frustration, maybe it's a perceived unfairness of the situation. Why is this happening? Discouragement.
I'm going to pause you for a second. Somebody's saying it's hard to hear you. Is anyone else having trouble hearing? We got some head shaking no. I'm not sure who M. Welts is. I'm sorry, it's not quite working. Jane, go ahead and continue.
Okay.
Where you were.
Hopefully you'll be able to hear us better soon. Some of the other things is depression, loss of opportunities, feeling overwhelmed with all the demands that a person has, and just lack of control of circumstances. Those are all very common emotions that caregivers feel. And some of the suggested tips, and this will be in the handout for all of these 4 areas, but for emotional demands, it might be finding somebody you can trust and talk about those feelings and frustrations. Being realistic about the demands of caregiving and knowing that you can't do it all and being able to turn to others for help. Setting aside time for yourself, for self-care and personal renewal. If people don't do that, they are not going to be able to continue in that role very long. Taking advantage of respite care services, that even just for a break for a few hours or a couple of days can really help a caregiver continue on in that role. Joining a caregiver support group, being able to share and learn from others who are going through something similar and getting assistance from others. So just wanted to kind of read through what you'll find in that handout, and hope that you'll find that useful as well. So with that, let's look and talk a little bit about some helpful resources. Support and resources in the caregiving process can come from a lot of different sources, and it's really important to be able to, for a caregiver to manage their situation, to access those and use those services. So we're going to highlight several examples. We're going to cover informal support, which is unpaid, formal support, which is paid, and then the state and professional resources. So let's take a look at informal support right now. So informal support services can come from a variety of places. It can be family members, friends, neighbors, your faith community, and others. Often these people are willing to provide support, but they may be unaware of what it is or how to be helpful. Caregivers really need to learn to be advocates for themselves and to avoid withdrawing from family and friends, because this, we know, will lead to a sense of isolation and discouragement. So instead, we need to identify individuals in your circle of informal support that could be approached with a request for support in the caregiving process. We know that reluctance in asking for and accepting help is a major barrier in getting the necessary respite and support.
Jane, may I add something here?
Yes, please.
And oftentimes, we have people in our lives that are providing care to someone else. And often we'll say, just let me know how I can help. And we genuinely mean well, but unfortunately, most of us are so unprepared to really say how we can say help. So it could be helpful to make direct offers. Can I shovel the snow for you? Can I pick up a couple things at the grocery store? Making those really direct suggestions of how we could help somebody can help people accept help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lacey. When we talk about making that plan of care, you know, what does your care recipient need, and then figuring out what can you do, and then what still needs to be done, and having very specific things. Maybe I need somebody to move snow for me. I need somebody to take my husband to a doctor appointment on next Thursday at 2 o'clock. And when somebody offers, let me know if I can help, you can reply with, you know, some specific things, and maybe find out what it is that they're comfortable with as well. But that's a very important point. So thank you for offering that as well. So looking at formal support services now, there are a variety of services that are designed really to assist caregivers in the community. And they can include everything from home delivered meals to transportation, and it can include adult daycare facilities, other types of respite care, either in your home or in a facility. And it can include many things like support groups that can offer really a good insight and connection and experience with others who are going through similar experiences as well. Many times in our community, there are you know, care management and in-person support and other types of assistance available. And often that information can be accessed at a senior center, or by contacting aging services or other agencies, local agencies right in your community that could provide that information to you as well. So looking at another kind of category of services as well, there are many sources of information and assistance that exist at the state, national, and professional association level. At the state level, we have state departments or agencies that deal with human services, social services, health, or aging, and they often have databases or information systems and services that are designed to assist caregivers. You know, at the national level as well, the federal government and national organizations such as AARP have information and resources that can assist caregivers as well. In addition, we have state and local chapters of need-specific organizations such as Alzheimer's Association that can provide resources and support to caregivers that are dealing with specific care needs or concerns as well. And then we do have a handout that I just want to show you. We hope that this is going to be a helpful resource. It's important for people to be able to access these services. That's really important that they know that they exist and that they can contact and actually use them to help them. This is a handout that includes state level resources for both North Dakota and South Dakota. And we've included what we feel are maybe some of the key agencies and services and supports available with a phone number, a description, a web link as well. We have national professional resources listed as well, some online resources for caregivers, and then some disease-specific resources as well. It's about 6 pages in length, and so we hope that it's a nice summary of resources that can be helpful to people. And then want to spend a little bit of time talking about the importance of caregivers taking care of themselves. What can they do? They're busy. They're caring for other people. Learning skills for self-care is really important. Regardless of how much care you provide, taking care of yourself is really an important ingredient for your wellness. So some of the skills or things that you need to do for self-care is to figure out those strategies for reducing your own personal stress. Learning how to communicate effectively. There's all kinds of emotions that come with caregiving. You're dealing with your care recipient and healthcare providers, sometimes in-home help. Being able to communicate effectively is important. And also communicating your needs as well. Those are important things. Setting limits. You're only one person. There's only so much that you can do, and you need to be able to know how to do that. Asking for help. We have talked about that in here several times already, that it's highly unlikely that one person can, especially as care needs increase, that one person can do it all without burning out or developing their own health problems. So it's important to ask for help. And then dealing with emotions. Their anger, resentment, guilt are some of the most common emotions that come with caregiving. And sometimes people don't realize that and they feel bad about that. But recognizing those are common emotions that caregivers have, and then knowing how they can deal with those emotions effectively so that they don't become problematic in their lives. And then how do we deal with changes that are occurring either for the care recipient or in the situation of caregiving. And lastly, caregiving is kind of a gradual, it's a process. Things continue to happen, and sometimes there are difficult decisions you need to make, whether it includes moving your loved one to a care facility. And so it's important how to know how to make those decisions and do so thoughtfully and not take it personally as well. So those are some of the skills that really are important for caregivers to know. So now we'll tell you a little bit about how can we get those self-care educational resources in our state. NDSU provides a program for caregivers called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. It's a self-care program for family caregivers. It's a national evidence-based program. It's a 6-week class where caregivers meet for either 90 minutes or 2 hours, 2.5 hours. There are several class leaders located throughout the state. So that is one program, and you can access more information at this website. NDSU helps administer that program. And then in South Dakota, there's a program called Stress Busting for Family Caregivers, which also is a self-care program. And there is a program coming soon called Savvy Caregiver Program, and I believe that is focused on dementia, those caring for somebody with dementia. These resources are also listed in that resource handout that I just showed you. So there's additional description and information about those programs, as well as some contact information. So those are some nice programs to have available in our states. And oftentimes I'll just say that one of the hardest things to do is reach family caregivers, because as we talked about in the very beginning, oftentimes caregivers don't identify themselves as such. They don't think they're a caregiver. They're just the spouse or the daughter or the son. And so oftentimes and plus caregivers are busy. They're doing, caregiving plus other things that they have going on in their life. So sometimes it's difficult to reach that. And so we're always looking for people that can help spread the word and that these programs do exist, because we want to help our caregivers that we have in North Dakota and South Dakota as well. So that is kind of the main content that we wanted to share with you now, but we did want to make sure that we had an opportunity to, talk about any questions or address any questions that you might have around caregiving or any of the information that we've gone through so far.
And you're welcome to type in the chat box or unmute yourself to ask questions, but we would love to see what you have to say about this topic.
if there aren't any questions, Lacey and I are always happy to talk about family caregiving if you think of something later, but we do want to just draw your attention to the website for NDSU Extension and SDSU Extension. You can find more information on family caregiving and other related topics there as well.
And Jane, I had a question. So say someone lives in Lemon and they're maybe hosting, I think Hettinger is pretty close, but they're hosting a Powerful Tools for Caregiver program. Could someone from South Dakota come up to Lemon to take that class if they wanted to?
If, I believe so, Lacey. We have some funding through our state agency, Aging Services, and for the program for older adults, Powerful Tools, there is a curriculum for family caregivers of children with special needs. We haven't offered that yet in North Dakota. It's a newer curriculum that was added. But for the curriculum for, it's called Adults with Chronic Illness, if it was that, the Older American Act dollars are the funding that is covering the cost. So there's not a cost for participants to attend. They get a help book, each participant, and those books cost about $30. And yep, there's Lacey showing one. And so those things are covered under the grant that we have. And I believe that
Here's the book.
It is Older American Act dollars, as I've learned that we can use that across state lines because it is.
And that's a stress busting book. So.
Yep, it is federal dollars, and so we are able to use that. And I know Mary Welts is from Aging Services is on the webinar as well. And so if I'm wrong in that, she can put in a chat. But we've had that issue just being Fargo here, where we have Moorhead, and we've got several, other border situations that have come up. So that question has come up before. So thank you for asking that. But to my best of my knowledge, it would be fine.
And as stress busting, as far as I know, there's no cost for family caregivers to participate in that one. And I wouldn't anticipate there would be a cost for Savvy Caregiver as well. So that stuff's coming. But our contact information will be in the email that I send you with the handouts and our PowerPoint slides. If you had a question, you just didn't want to answer it before the group, Jane and I understand. We recognize that, caregiving is a very delicate topic. You're more than welcome to reach out to either of us. Jane is located in Fargo, but she does have an appointment with South Dakota State University Extension. So we work together quite extensively. So you're welcome to reach out to either one of us. I know a few people got the the link for this presentation because they weren't able to register. If you want to receive the handouts, please type your email in the chat box so I can put it into the email. Otherwise, I don't have your contact information. So again, if you got the web URL like this morning to come participate, type your email address in the chat box for me.
Lacey?
Yes, sir. Ma'am,
this is Ida Marie.
Sorry, Ida Marie.
Yeah, my voice is always doing something. One of the things that we've done here in Spearfish is we started a small caregiving group. And it seems to be word of mouth is working the best for getting people to come.
Awesome.
So I don't know.
I think that makes sense. So tell us a little bit about this caregiving group and what you guys do.
Well, we started, Alliance for Successful Aging. I can't remember the name of it ever. But we meet on the first Wednesday of every month at 1 o'clock at Perkins. We're there about an hour. We've got some people that help facilitate, but we just have people come and they talk. And that seems to solve some of their stress, which is so important.
It's amazing, Ida Marie, how much just having that outlet helps.
Yep.
I also lead a dementia support group here in Rapid City. And one gentleman this last month was the second time coming. And he shared that the first time he came, another older gentleman who shared his experiences really helped him.
Yeah.
And I think that that isolation piece of being a caregiver is very damaging to us. And
Oh, yes.
By finding those opportunities to connect. So that's awesome that you have a group that you have put together, and you meet monthly or weekly?
We meet monthly. First Wednesday of the month, except in July and August because of other things that happen, like the rally.
Awesome, Marie. You and your team up there have done such a phenomenal job of trying to make sure that people in the Northern Hills have an opportunity to age well. I commend you all.
Thank you.
That's a great comment about the just personal connections, and that's how people find out and they come. We found out with powerful tools too. It's not something if we offer a workshop that we put it in the paper or do a media release. It requires people making personal connections with people out in their community, whether it's their neighbor, somebody they go to church with, that they know is providing some family, caregiving, and it requires that one-on-one conversation. Hey, did you know about this? Whether you're meeting at Perkins or you're offering this class, it really requires a personal invitation, I think, because that's what it takes. So I appreciate hearing that. The other workshops, Lisi, I think those were on the last screen.
They were. That slide, yeah, our next one, and this will be in that PowerPoint we send out to you. It'll be a different file, but our next one is July 10th, and we're going to talk about long-term care planning. Jane in particular, this topic is near and dear to her heart. She has a long career in long-term care before she became part of Extension, and she has a great experience and perspective that's really difficult to get. So we're looking forward to talking about long-term care and planning for long-term care. It's a very important topic, and we want to help, try to get some information out there. So that is our next topic. And then in August, we're going to talk about aging well. So we're really looking forward to that one. And then September will be the difficult conversations. I'm highly encouraged, if there's a topic you want us to see, if we can't do it, we'll find who can. Put in the evaluation. We'll figure out how to make it happen. We understand if you're done, you can sign off. If you have a question, we're here. But we appreciate you giving us your time today. And definitely, hi.
Could you include the caregiver questions we used for survey?
How about the polls?
If somebody was a caregiver, if they provided those.
Yes, I can put those questions. I'll put them in a Word document. I'll have to. Yeah, those questions we used. Yep, I'll add those.
Sure. Great.
Yeah. Awesome. Again, thank you all for your time. We are here for you. We're here for your families. At the end of the day, our role is to make sure that you and your families have the information you need to have a high quality, good life. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for participating. Have a good day.